You never know how far one idea will go and who it will impact. Like her family, their community, our planet. At Deloitte, we measure ideas by the impact they'll have. Because why connect, or innovate, or engineer anything, if not to make an impact that actually matters? No matter who you are, where you are, or where you're going, Deloitte is there, and there, and even there. We are dedicated to helping people and organizations solve problems, to know faster, to grow farther, to go from red to black to green, creating impact where it matters most.
Making an impact that matters doesn't happen by accident. It is a series of deliberate actions. I just left the university not long ago, and I feel like I can help them because there were so many things when I was there I had in mind that when I came to the corporate world it was so different. So in Ghana, for the very first time, we're going into universities. We're off to the University of Professional Studies and to Accra Technical University. And so it will be very exciting for us going there, and also exciting for the students to realize what can become of your life based on mentorship, career development, and intentional actions.
And in a world where young people are often overwhelmed by concepts, this gesture can be a life-changing one.
It's a young individual who is now coming up in the world of business. I have no experience, so the program taught me a lot. How to go about mentorship, internship, and the companies I'm supposed to look out for, and then stuff I'm supposed to do as a person.
So across the continent today, we have various men and women, professionals within our business, going into schools, playgrounds, community centers, and giving back to society from our time. We call it making an impact that matters. Collectively in Africa, we call it Volunteer Day.
A lot of sharing of our experiences, storytelling, letting them know which path we went, and also mentoring.
Deloitte and IT is it's a home business, and that's all. So it's not only accounting that can get you into Deloitte.
Deloitte is a very diverse company, fosters inclusion. So if you come there, even if you did a week, you'll find something to do right here, which in the end will make an impact that matters.
I learned a whole lot about how to apply for a job, being specific, being deliberate, when you go for interview, how you present yourself, and also how you express yourself.
And today's event is one of the most meaningful on this campus this year. In fact, this year is one of the most meaningful.
This is Deloitte Ghana. By building on Deloitte's core purpose of making an impact that matters, we are a leader in professional services in Ghana. Across many Ghanaian professional services firms, our identity can be traced as far back as 1947. For the first time, here is our story. Meet some of the people who started it all. In 1939, James Donald Barnes, a Scottish chartered accountant, arrived in Gold Coast as an internal auditor.
future. This enhances business community and also enhances the investment climate in Ghana. We've also seen plans by government to embark on restructuring of state institutions and support with strategic reforms. These are very important and enhance the climate environment in Ghana. We've also noticed some digitalization agenda by government, as stated in budget statements, policies of various ministries and departments, particularly the Ministry of Communication and Digitalization. These are all positive developments, and we want to commend government for that. There's a bold initiative called the 24-hour economy, which is supposed to support all aspects of our economic life, particularly around areas of infrastructure development, supporting agribusiness to enhance or to contribute to enhancing value addition to agricultural products. These policies are laudable, and these performance indicators, as highlighted, are very good. But for us to sustain them and also to ensure that business community benefits, we'd have to address some of the obvious gaps or challenges we have in our business community. The first one is what we call regulatory bottlenecks. A few months ago, we organized a survey, or we undertook a survey for the Petroleum Commission as part of the local content event that was happening in Takoradi. And some of the questions we asked participants, particularly the petroleum sector, was around their challenges they've had with regulatory institutions. The regulators that were mentioned in our survey include the Registrar General's Department, Ghana Revenue Authority, Ghana Investment Promotion Center, the Ministry of Finance, Bank of Ghana, among others. The key points noted is that these regulators have very good professionals, which is very good. But the challenge they have first was with fees and charges that are meted out by these institutions. Some of them are just too expensive. And for most of them, even when you do not perform or you do not use your license for a year and you have to renew, you have to pay new charges. Or even when your license has not expired and there are things that you have to do to improve it, you have to pay. The second issue that was noted from some of our studies was around inconsistencies in policies. So in a particular year, there's a tax policy that's affecting a particular sector. And the next budget is read and that policy changes. The next budget is read and the policy is brought back. So policy inconsistencies are things we need to address. And then the next issue is around the misalignment of regulatory policies and regulatory initiatives. So for most of these businesses that we interact with, they said, is there a one-stop shop where if I walk to that department, I'm able to register with SNIT, I'm able to register with the Ghana Revenue Authority, I'm ready to register with GIPC, everybody together. Or I have to walk from GIPC, go to GRA, go to SNIT, go to whichever regulator, which industry. That is a lot of work and it's cumbersome. And it's something we need to address. And I guess the other factors have to be with also supporting with digital infrastructure. We have seen some improvement with digitalization of some aspect of our regulatory environment. So for instance, taxes. You are able to file your taxes online, etc. We want this to run through all other agencies and departments of government. That helps to improve the business community. We think this is a forum for us to discuss more of these challenges, propose reforms that will help improve them. So it's not a talk shop. It's a forum that you're organizing for us to propose or make recommendations that are implementable, that are smart, things that we can touch, we can implement, and government can easily reform to ensure that. To unlock the full potential that we have in the Ghanaian economy, which we know, our economy has got a lot of potential. We must, as a group, governments, private sector, come together to address these challenges. And some of them include addressing the regulatory issues that I mentioned, maintaining macroeconomic stability, and also for the business community, supporting the government initiative to increase revenue. If you're a business owner here, make sure you pay your taxes and pay the tax on time. That is a way that we both support government to implement the right policies, and the government also implements the right policies, support all of us. Thank you, and I hope that you have a very interactive section Feel free to contribute when you are asked to, and feel free to participate. And online participants, you'll be given the opportunity to ask questions or to share your thoughts as well. Please feel free to participate. Thank you, and I wish you a wonderful event. Just help her to set up.
I think I'm
so
set
Cheryl,
up.
Over to you.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. No. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our session. I think Ajoba and Yao have given a good brief of what the discussion is about. So what I'll do is to go into the expected outcomes, and then I'll discuss some of the key areas that we need to focus on. I think what we have said today is that we're looking at the role of government in investment creation. But as we will all see from the discussions, it really goes beyond the role of the government. There's a lot of private sector discussions that would be held today. So it's really the role of the government and the private sector in improving investment. Can we have the slides up, please? Okay. All right, so I think as we mentioned, the topic for today, enhancing the investment climate in Ghana, the role of the government. And so we'll go into it. Before we go into it, I'll look at some of the expected outcomes that we are meant to discuss today. We hope to get a clearer understanding of government's strategic role in shaping the investment landscape, in Ghana's investment landscape. We also hope to look at practical policy recommendations for improving investor confidence and reducing risk. And we cannot do justice to this topic without looking at collaborative approaches and the recommendations that both the private sector and the government need to put in place going forward. And so we'll look at the first key point. So we'll take a focus on Ghana. So we'll look at Ghana's case. Now, Ghana is positioned as West Africa's leading investment destination, supported by sound fiscal management. There's a strong non-oil sector growth and a stable macroeconomic environment. Okay. So I think we know, Yao mentioned some of the macroeconomic indicators that are rife at this moment. We've talked about GDP. It's important for Ghana to ensure that our macroeconomic growth and stability is sustained. Now, the projection is good for Ghana at this moment. I think we all know that. We know that GDP is projected to reach USD 120 billion by the end of this year. Again, in terms of ranking, Ghana is ranked as one of the most peaceful countries in the region consistently, according to Global Peace Index. We also know that the economy is gaining momentum based on all of these facts. And this is supported by the recent upgrade from the Fitch ratings. The country's credit rating was raised from restricted default to a B in this year, 2025. And then we also have a decline in inflation, currently at 12.1%. And I think we all agree that this signifies a positive shift in investor confidence and macroeconomic growth. Now, Ghana is also a top gold producer, as we know, and the world's second largest cocoa producer. Now, the statistics are that gold per ounce increased from 2023, a figure of about $1,944 to currently standing at $3,273. We know that cocoa per ton also has improved, standing at $3,295 to currently about $8,877, which needs to be sustained going forward. There are many opportunities beyond gold and cocoa. There's also opportunities for cashew, etc., which we'll come to later on in this presentation. Now, to talk about trade briefly before we move on, I think we all know the position of Ghana in the heart of West Africa. the African Continental Free Trade Area is positioned in Ghana with a lot of progress made to improve intra-African trade. Indeed, the FTCA has been touted as the biggest trade area in the globe, or globally, in terms of how many countries have signed on to the Trade Pact. Now, currently, we have about 54 countries that have signed on, making the opportunities endless for this region. And so there's a lot of work to do in terms of what the government has to do to improve intra-trade relations, but there's also a lot of opportunities for investors to tap into. Now, the investment landscape, I won't spend too much time on this, but it's important to know a lot of work has been done in that area with the bodies such as the Ghana Investment Promotion Center. When we get into the panel discussions, we would have representative from the GIPC who would give more details on that. Now, there's a proposed transition from, the GIPC is currently a center. There's proposed transition from that center to an authority, and the idea is that there's hopes to expand its regulatory and promotional functions of the center. And I think that the question that a lot of us would have is that what does this mean for businesses? So if currently the GIPC is touted as a center, and Kwame is smiling, moving it to an authority, what would that mean? So Kwame, I'll leave that to you. I guess you would have the details for us later on. In terms of tax compliance, there's been a lot of work that has been done in this area. There is an ongoing integration of the national ID for tax identification to streamline compliance, and then also online platform for tax filing and payments. Now, if we look at key investment areas of focus, there are 5 key areas that we would like to focus on today. Ghana presents a compelling landscape for investment, and we know that GDP stood at about 5.7% in the first quarter of this year, and this is the highest performing GDP per quarter figure for many years. Now, the breakdown is as follows. The agri sector accounted for about 23.5%, industry accounts for almost 30%, and the services sector about 46.8%. So we'll go into each of these very briefly. In terms of energy and natural resources, we can focus on upstream exploration and production. So Ghana's Petroleum Commission champions these efforts. It's highlighted major investment opportunities in the oil and gas sector, following the success of Jubilee and 10. But let's take a focus on private sector participation in power distribution. We know that the government intends to introduce a multiple lease model, MLM approach, which is designed to manage electricity distribution in regional units, and the goal is to attract credible investors and reduce technical and commercial losses. So in terms of agriculture, we've focused on 4 main areas, and the government has rolled out diverse programs in the agricultural sector, including the Feed Ghana initiative. There's also fishery and aquaculture, a focus on that. We already know the importance of the cocoa production sector, and then agri-tech and infrastructure. So just to focus on the Feed Ghana initiative, because I've already spoken about cocoa. So the government is actively promoting investment in commercial farming with initiatives focusing on the production and processing of key food crops like cashew, shea, rubber, mango, and palm. And as we go into this presentation further, I will draw the links between these focus areas and then the 24-hour economic policy, some of the progress that has been made in that area, and then the plans that the government has for that area. Now, manufacturing is a big aspect of development focus for any developing country like Ghana. Ghana's manufacturing sector is a key driver of the country's economic growth, and there are a lot of industrialization and value addition options to consider. I mentioned the 24-hour economy. Now, the government's 24-hour economy signifies a clear policy direction for investors. We've already mentioned the focus areas, poultry, fruits, vegetables, etc. In terms of textiles, the 24-hour economy also proposes to focus on textiles by giving tax rebates to businesses that look or are seeking to go into that area. There's also pharmaceuticals within the country's recent WHO or World Health Organization Maturity Level 3 designation. It offers locals a competitive advantage in that area. Again, in terms of plastic manufacturing, now plastic is a very topical issue in our country in terms of pollution. We hear of single-use plastics, etc. The Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology has initiated a 7 million project as recently as in April 2024 to support Ghana's circular economy in plastics. And so since this commitment was made just recently in April, I think we all look forward to seeing or hearing what the government has in place in the coming months in store for us. Now, the financial sector. I think we all know that the financial sector is a major backbone of the economy. In terms of, we have a few areas highlighted, the cryptocurrency, we have a focus on the Ghana Stock Exchange, digital finance and fintech, and then the Ghana CD Gold Coin. Beyond these areas that we've mentioned, however, there continues to be interest and focus on the banking sector. Increasingly, we speak to investors who are interested in the non-interest banking sector or non-interest banking area. And we know that the Bank of Ghana has committed to establishing a regulatory framework to improve non-interest or to set up non-interest banking in Ghana. And this is a key area of focus for many investors. Indeed, like I mentioned, we have a number of investors who come to us seeking to expand in this area. We already have non-interest banking platforms and presence in Nigeria. We also have companies that are looking to set up, or banks that are looking to set up similar in Sierra Leone as well. And so there's a lot of opportunity in that area as well. In terms of digital, the government's push and partnership for digital transformation includes initiatives like the Ghana UAE Tech and Innovation Hub, which is creating fertile ground for companies. I'll just focus on one area when it comes to tech and digitalization, which is agri-tech. Now, agriculture, we know, is a major backbone of our economy, and investors can focus on solutions for supply chain management using agri-tech, precision farming, weather forecasting, and market access for farmers. There's also a growing need for efficient healthcare delivery. Opportunities exist in developing telemedicine platforms, remote diagnostics, and digital health record systems. Now, we would like to focus on the 24-hour economy. Please move forward. Okay. The next slide, please. Now, I think we know the 24-hour economy was launched just recently in July. And what the government would have us know is that the focus cuts across infrastructure, manufacturing, agriculture, the creative space and industry. But I think for us, we'd like to focus on what the opportunities present in this space. So what really is a 24-hour economy? I think the government has spent some time sensitizing the public on what it is and what's to look out for. And so we'll not go into that. But what are the opportunities in there? So we know that there are plans to boost exports and substitute imports by focusing on specific value chains in agro-processing and pharmaceuticals. For investors and governments, there are different roles to play. Investors definitely have to identify opportunities at every stage of the value chain, from sourcing and processing raw materials to packaging and distribution, and then the government needs to improve the value chain. Now, one of the complaints that we constantly receive from investors, obviously, is poor road networks. When it comes to digitalization, there's a huge gap there as well. Electricity, there is a major gap as well. So there's a number of reforms that the government has put in place and is planning to put in place to support the sector in that area. And so investors should look beyond traditional hours to consider investing in the supporting infrastructure. There's opportunities for logistics, public transport, security, digital infrastructure to ensure that businesses work around the clock. So beyond that, we also need to look at the informal sector. Now, Ghana's informal sector accounts for approximately 80% of the total workforce, while contributing to about 27% of the nation's GDP. Beyond that, one of the most popular statistics that we know when it comes to the informal sector is that 92% of women are employed by the informal sector, and 86% of men are employed by the sector. Now, there's 98% of new graduates that find work in the informal sector due to limited formal sector hiring. So what does that tell us? The opportunities in there are endless. There are a number of SMEs that seek support every day, support in terms of advisory, set up their business plan, set up their business, so they come to us to help develop business plans for them, SME support, cutting across the value chain, raising capital, etc. So I think the government would have to do some work in that space to support small businesses to scale up. Now, the way forward for formalizing the informal sector would be simplifying business registration. Simplifying business registration really sits with the bodies like the GIPC, the RGD, etc. And I know we'll go into that in the panel discussions. It's also important to promote financial inclusion. Now, the government, in partnership with the Bank of Ghana, we recommend should establish a fund to underwrite significant percentage of loans made to the commercial banks to newly formalize small businesses, and this will go a long way to support them scale up. Now, in terms of optimizing public-private partnership structure, so we reckon that PPPs, as we know, in this part of the world are a big way of improving infrastructure, manufacturing, in the energy space, etc. A lot of the key projects that the government has undertaken, road projects, transport projects, have been undertaken by PPPs. But most of the time, we have investors complain about the space within which they operate. And so there's complaints about long procurement processes, for example, that they cannot manage well enough. There's also a huge gap for bankable projects when it comes to PPPs. And then also one issue that keeps coming up for foreign investors is that there is not a commitment from governments to continue PPP projects, especially when a government changes hands. And so because of that, investors find it very difficult investing in that market. So for us, what we've sought to do is look at the rationale for PPPs, which is public-private partnership structure, collaboration between the public and the private sector to deliver and manage public sector goods. So there's a long-term vision that Ghana has to transform into a middle-income country by 2030, and heavy infrastructure investment is paramount to make that happen. Additional funding from the private sector is needed to reduce the funding gap that we currently face. The public sector cannot do it alone, the private sector cannot do it alone. And so it's important to collaborate to close this gap. Now, PPPs are a popular choice for project delivery with a projected global infrastructure investment requirement of about 94 trillion by 2040. I think we know that for Ghana, the figure is about 45 billion by 2030 that is required to close the infrastructure gap. What are the key areas that the government needs to get right? Financial advisory. I mentioned that there are a number of unbankable projects that investors decry. So financial advisory plays a crucial role. Getting the right partner on board, instruction and implementing successful PPPs is key. One of the key challenges, I'm sure I mentioned that before also, is stakeholder management. Now, stakeholder management, right from the value chain, from the beginning to delivery and management and operationalization of PPP projects is very paramount. And a lot of the time, investors find that that gap is not, the government is not able to close that gap. So we need to look at stakeholder management, we need to look at regulatory requirements and financial structuring to be able to deliver effective PPP products and projects, So finally, just to say that Deloitte plays a key part in enhancing private sector participation, and this aid includes increasing project value, reducing the risks associated with projects of this nature, and managing stakeholders and overseeing projects. And so if we are to look at some key takeaways from this keynote and this presentation, it's important for the government to look at fiscal discipline and monetary policy discipline. So expenditure control is important. There is a need to reduce budget deficits, and I think the government is working very hard on that. We've seen the improvements in GDP, we've seen the improvements in interest rates, inflation, etc. And so the call is that we need to continue in that direction. We also need to try to avoid as much as possible large-scale unfunded projects. And the way to do this is, as I mentioned, getting the right advisor on board to deliver these projects. Debt sustainability is a big issue as well. Prudent debt management, and then, as we mentioned, keeping a debt to GDP ratio at an optimal level. Now, beyond all of this, there are also lessons to be learned globally, not just in Africa, but across, not just in the African region, but across the globe. So, for example, we know that the Ghana.gov platform has improved a lot of processes in terms of combating bureaucracy, corruption, etc. But there's still a huge gap, because this gap is one of the key issues that the businesses we work with constantly speak of. And so there's the call to just beyond focusing on some key processes, perhaps to look at adopting digital-only policy for investors throughout the value chain. So from application to payments, this should be fully digital, eliminating the need for physical paperwork and face-to-face interaction. There's also a point on offering performance-based incentives rather than blanket incentives. And what we mean by that is, beyond just giving tax holidays, tax rebates to businesses who happen to be on the shores of Ghana, perhaps we need to look beyond that. So we need to look at countries like Singapore, who have tied incentives to job creation. So as an investor who looks or seeks to invest in Ghana, we can look at, in a certain time period, within a year, how many jobs have been, how many jobs have you created as an investor? And then in terms of local content rules. So we know that in the extractive industry, for instance, we have very elaborate local content rules. The problem is that we do not enforce them. So how can we go from just having those rules in place to ensuring that the companies that we work with follow those rules and then meet the metrics that we set for them? And then, for example, technology transfer commitment is a huge thing, particularly in, as I mentioned, extractive companies, energy companies, etc. So there's the need to look at, manage or track how technology transfer is done in these companies. And then if the government is able to monitor this over time, they can make a good case for offering incentives to these businesses. So I think these three key areas should be looked at chiefly by the government, but also by the private sector, to be able to meet the goal of improving investment climate in Ghana. Thank you very much.
Can we put our hands together one more time for Cheryl? I think her presentation is packed. You agree with me?
Thank you.
We'll try to dissect it as much as we can and make sure we have a very useful and meaningful discussion before we're out of here. So we'll be moving into our panel discussions shortly. And as has been said a number of times from the presenters you've heard, today we'll be talking about how we can enhance the investment climate in Ghana, the role of government. So today we are on the case of the government. And it's just apt that we have quite a bit of private sector players here. We have somebody from academia, and then we have representatives of government as well here, to whom we'll be throwing a lot of our questions, as you would expect. So, without further ado, let me quickly introduce the panelists that will be coming up, you'll be hearing from. And let me just say that I will not be asking the questions alone, even though I'm the moderator. We would have a chance to have particularly our in-person and, of course, our online participants have a chance to ask questions as we move along, because I'm pretty sure there are some specific questions you want to ask that will be relevant for your business. Now, our first panelist, you just heard from her, she's Cheryl Otu. She's a senior manager at Deloitte. She's been working for over 15 years, as I'm sure you've gleaned from the many things she said in her presentation. She's been leading public financial management, economic advisory, fund management, audit and compliance assignments at Deloitte. And she's led a number of teams across various sectors to deliver on complex transactions. Now, she's also previously worked at another consulting firm, but for today, she'll be our financial expert on the panel. So ladies and gentlemen, if you please help me welcome up to the stage, Cheryl Otu. Also, we'll be hearing from someone else from Deloitte. He's a partner at Deloitte. He's been working for a number of years as well, particularly on the regulatory and compliance side. I work with him personally, actually, and I've seen him in action, providing, solutions to clients' problems. That is his focus. And help me welcome upstage Wisdom Panel from Deloitte. He will be our regulatory and compliance expert on the panel today. So as promised, we would have someone from academia as well, who will be given perspective, obviously, from the research angle. He's essentially, a third party. He's not on the private sector side, not necessarily. He's not on the government side either. So we'll be expecting some rich perspectives from him as well. So we'll be hearing from Professor Festus Ebo Texan, who is at the Department of Economics, University of Ghana. He's been specializing in macroeconomics and finance, monetary and financial economics, small and medium scale enterprises development, industrial policy, applied microeconometrics. Econometrics, I remember that course. And international trade policy and finance. He's an associate professor of economics, as mentioned earlier, with the University of Ghana, with an economics research, teaching, and consultancy career spanning over 20 years. He holds a PhD in economics from the University of Nottingham and is a member of the Leverhulme Center for Research on Globalization and Economic Policy of the School of Economics of the Nottingham. In fact, you see, he's just brilliant. So please let me welcome on stage Professor Texan. Also, we'll be hearing from the head of investment and promotion and business development at the Ghana Investments Promotion Center. He has also over 17 years of experience at the center. He has proven success in attracting FDIs with specialization in agriculture, trade, and renewable energy. His knowledge extends to the development of effective investment promotion strategies, evidenced by his contributions to the GIPC's participation in prominent global events such as the 2020 Dubai Expo. Ladies and gentlemen, please let me welcome on stage Mr. Kwame Kese Ejepong. Also, we'll be hearing from just a minute, please. We also have a representative from the Venture Capital Trust Fund, I believe, in the person of Mr. Osman Aziz. If he's here in person with us, if you could please join us on stage. Thank you, sir, for coming. Please have a seat. Yes, please. And last but not least, we have a private sector businessman who will be joining us online in the person of Mr. Nicholas Gabara. He's a distinguished expert in trade and investment with over 30 years of experience leading complex, high-impact projects across both the public and private sectors. Kindly have him on screen. I believe he's online, so kindly let's have his video up so we can have a look at him. He's also the CEO of the European Chamber of Commerce in Ghana, and he plays a central role in strengthening the Ghana-EU business partnership, bringing together government leaders, European investors, and Ghanaian entrepreneurs to forge partnerships and address barriers to trade and investment. So last but not least on our panel, we would have Mr. Nicholas Gebara. Let's put our hands together for him. I believe Mr. Gebara has been set up online, so we can begin.
Good morning, everyone.
Okay, that was very loud and clear. Mr. Gebara is with us. So,
thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We've heard over and over again, in fact, as long as I can remember, how Ghana has economic potential because we have abundant natural resources, we have a dynamic workforce. We pretty much should have everything going for us, right? But it seems like we are still yet to realize that economic potential, and it's actually for dialogues like these that we expect to not just have a typical talk shop, but share ideas, share solutions as we can, of course, network and see how best we can come together, both as regulators and private sector players, to get us to where we need to begin. Before we begin, though, let's do a picture of hands. How many of us have invested in a business in Ghana or we're currently running a business in Ghana? By a quick show of hands. Great. So I'm sure most of us already appreciate why these conversations are important. And for those of us who didn't raise our hands, I'm sure by the time we are done with these discussions, you understand why these kind of dialogues are useful, right? So I will begin with our private sector people, right? I would give Deloitte the first word. We'll hear from the academia side as well. Then we'll go online to hear from Nicholas, and then finally we'll get to GIPC and VCTF reps here. But the first question is really, I guess, a general one, really. So, from the private sector perspective, right? Based on a lot of the advisory work that I know, Cheryl, you do, Wisdom also does quite a bit of it. What would you say are the priority areas or sectors for investments that government should be taking note of? We'll hear from the government side on what they're already thinking about, but for now, for the private sector, from the private sector perspective, based on a lot of the experience you have helping clients, I'm sure foreign investors, the domestic investors, what do you think are some of the sectors that government should be focusing on in order to achieve, the investment climates that we would all like going forward? I'll start with Cheryl. We'll hear from Wisdom, then would hear from Professor Texan, then would go online and come back to government.
Thank you very much, Na. I think I'll focus on two main areas. One I spoke of in my presentation. When it comes to the regulatory landscape, Ghana's regulatory landscape, a lot of investors mentioned that it's very complex to navigate. I think Yao even mentioned it in his presentation as well. So a lot of the times we are not sure whether there's supposed to be a one-stop shop. In fact, there isn't. There isn't a one-stop shop. For example, if you need to register your business, you need to make multiple stops at different institutions. And what happens is that this causes a lot of fatigue among for investors. Another area is infrastructure. So a lot of businesses obviously want to invest in the country, but what we find is for businesses, for example, who are into agriculture. So let's take a Blue Skies, for instance. One of the key issues I know that that business really complained about is in terms of the road network. I know that the government has a lot of plans in place for that. In terms of the Volta Corridor network that the 24-hour economy policy, for example, focuses on, I know there's huge plans for that in terms of transportation, in terms of improving the agricultural value chain. So I believe that once we are able to crack that code, it should be a good area. So I would say regulatory complexities and also infrastructural issues. Yeah.
Right. So the investment sectors for you that government should focus on: infrastructure, having good regulatory, sustainable, standard. Say again. Simplified. Yeah, absolutely. So those are the key ones for you. Yeah, Wisdom. Based on your work and experience, what do you think government should be focusing on in terms of investment sectors?
Right. So, good morning. Good morning to our distinguished guests and our online participants. So, from my side, I see, so generally, for all sectors, you surely have players in those sectors wherever. And these players, because they are businesses and they are looking at profits, they would follow what the government does. So once you create the enabling environment in particular sectors, you will see investors following. Once they have the assurance that their investments will be protected, there is sustainability in the factors that will bring them to town, you will see investors coming through. At current, it's difficult not to see agriculture and agro-processing as a key priority area of governments, given all the discussion that has gone on from various programs introduced out of the 24-hour economy and the focus for agriculture and so Feed Ghana, several other programs, agriculture and agro-processing. Then I also see an uptick in interest in renewable energy. So again, that is where the world is going, and I believe that government should be focusing on the renewable energy sector, your solar energy plants, your the biomass and other energy sector areas. I believe government should be looking at that. And to have the energy ministry now transformed to include the green energy, that is a good mark, and that should be a focus area. We are seeing investors all across looking at carbon credits and how they can make investments in Ghana. So renewable energy, agriculture, and of course, our oil and gas industry is seeing an uptick in investments. The new discoveries would mean that we have investors coming in across the value chain, and that should be an area we make sure that we capture the value that comes with the uptick in the investments, the technology, getting the right environment to ensure that they stay and we get the right value out of those investments. So 3 for me: agric and agro processing, renewable energy, and then oil and gas.
All right, thank you, Wisdom. I think that's quite clear. Let's come to academia. Prof, based on your research, your readings, and all of that, the trends you are seeing, particularly on the macroeconomic scale, what do you think should be the priority sectors for investment by the government in Ghana?
Okay, so thank you. Governments have no business in going directly into production, right? So governments would normally invest in the enablers that will allow the private sector to develop. Now, Ghana as a country has over the years, I've been involved in 2 research over the last 5 years, one for the Brookings Institution and then one for the World Bank, where in those 2 studies, we tried to look at Ghana's transformation and what we need to transform our economy. And in the first work that we did, we identified 4 main sectors that the country should take a look at and then steer investment into that direction. One of them was agro-processing, industrialization. That was going to be driven by the 1D1F, which is now turned into a 24-hour economy. Because God has endowed us with agricultural resources, and we have no business importing very simple value addition agriculture, fruit juice, and all those basic cereals that we eat. We should produce them here. And so agro-process industrialization is one sector that we focused on. Why? Because we also need to create jobs for the youth. And simple manufacturers require labor. It's more labor intensive. So we have not gotten to the stage where we begin to look at high-skill, what you call high-tech manufacturers, which are less labor intensive. So our focus was on agro-process industrialization. And then also light manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, and also the automobile industry, as well as textile and garments. And it was that work that government focused on in its first attention at light manufacturing, pharmaceutical, textile and garments, and automobile industry. So remember, just after the COVID, when our study came out, the government decided to focus on these sectors. Then 2 years afterwards, the World Bank, through the African Center for Economic Transformation, came back to us to do another research to confirm what we needed in Ghana, and we identified the same sectors. And one of the main pillars of the just ended National Economic Dialogue, which I led that pillar, was to discuss the findings from that study that we did. And so the 24-hour economy is moving towards that direction. So government has no business itself going into investment in that direction. What Madam said and your colleague also said, government's business is to enable the business environment to allow the private sector to thrive. And one of the key sectors is infrastructure. And government cannot do it alone, like Madam said. I mean, after a point, I told her, you didn't even need me on this panel because she addressed almost everything that I was going to talk about. Infrastructure is key. I mean, the cost of doing business in Ghana is too high. That is why we are not competitive. That is why imports can come in and out-compete our local firms, because the business environment, taxes are too high, too many taxes, business entry processes are too cumbersome. You have to find your way in getting things done for you. And all of these costs that you incur, extra costs that you incur, factors into your cost of production. And therefore, even if you are producing as import substitute, you cannot compete with the imports that come in, much more to move into export. So the government has to invest in infrastructure that will reduce the cost of doing business. I remember in 2006, we did a study for the African Economic Research Consortium to look at Ghana's export supply response. I remember I interviewed a firm at, I think it's still there, behind the old Kingsway, into textile and garment. And the CEO indicated to me that at his factory gate, whatever garments he's producing into the United Kingdom, he's more competitive than some of the firms even in Taiwan who produce per his factory gate. But he becomes uncompetitive by the time he gets to the final destination because of the huge trade costs in Ghana. We impose taxes on everything that we want to get money from. Even at the ports, export taxes and all of. So by the time your firm that you think that should go out there to export, to bring your export receipts, leave the shores of Ghana, you've turned their competition, you've taken it away from them through taxes. At times, unnecessary delays at the port. These are the sort of things government needs to invest in. And so the 24-hour economy can only work if all of these enablers of investment and private sector participation are sorted out by government. We need to remove all these obstacles, I mean, a lot of that. And then also, like she said, we need also to ensure that we commit to the regulatory environment. I mean, at times, some of these processes are, whilst the government itself is focusing on collecting revenue, the district assemblies are also disturbing these firms with so many taxes and a duplication of some of these. And that is one of the reasons why Ghana is not an attractive destination for businesses. And this is something we need as a country to begin to have a discussion on. Our failure to raise enough taxes has focused more on private sector firms to take all the money from them. I mean, it is only in Ghana and other African countries where households pay lower tariffs for electricity than businesses. It's supposed to be the opposite. Businesses offer us the jobs. If we reduce the cost of electricity, their energy, they will employ more people for them to work. But because of political expediency, our politicians promise households, I'll reduce your tariffs when I get into power. And they do that. And who funds the rest? It's going to be from the taxes that they impose on businesses to collect revenue to fund that subsidy. It's something that we need to stop as a country. So government has a key role to play. Look, when we steer investment into those sectors by creating, if you look at the East Asian Tigers, what was their strategy? Their strategy was just simple. They are taking few key sectors that we think that will drive our development. And we are going to be intentional about supporting them. Why not losing focus on the other sectors? And then we support them with subsidized credit. We support them with processes that will enable them to reduce their cost of doing business. And then give them targets. How many can you employ in a year? Well, how much can you export in a year? And when you're exporting, how do you reduce your cost of production? So they were giving everything they needed in support of that and giving targets. That is how the Asian Tigers, South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and Hong Kong developed their economies. As of 1960, we were just like an African country. Taiwan and Singapore had a GDP per capita that was lower than Ghana. So you see, it is government that has to be benevolent in its vision and its policy to support private sector. Government has no business going into those sectors itself to produce. Like, I've heard discussion of going back to get a sugar factory to be okay. I mean, we have no business even investing that money in production of sugar. What we should have done was to create an environment for a private sector firm to come in. If that private sector firm had come to do an assessment to find out we didn't have the sugar cane that you could add value to, we wouldn't have set up the company. But we did because we wanted to set up a company. And the government has no business into direct production. What it needs is to give them enablers of investment.
Absolutely. Thank you, Prof. I think probably we all deserve a round of applause for now. For everything that has been said so far. We've heard about infrastructure, we've heard agro-processing, coming out prominently again. Prof has already gone into lessons we can learn from other countries. But for now, let's hear if we have Nicholas online. Nicholas, from your perspective as a businessman who has engaged in a number of complex projects from time to time, what do you think should be the priority areas that government should be focusing their attention when it comes to investment?
All right. So as an executive director of Eurocham promoting investments into Ghana, we have identified about 5 to 6 key sectors. The first one, and I think there will be some overlap in what my peers have been also mentioning. The first one is definitely the construction industry, where there's a renewed focus on infrastructure development. And there are opportunities, like Ms. Cheryl Otu has mentioned. There are opportunities for public-private partnerships. We talk about roads, we talk about railways, we talk about affordable housings. This is where there are opportunities for investments, and where European businesses can bring some technology and know-how. The second one, I'm not mentioning them by order of priority, but just mentioning them, is the agribusiness, which of course is extremely important. We all know that cocoa is the vital export product for Ghana agricultural economy, and also helping the rural livelihood. But there, EU-Ghana partnerships can also contribute in terms of sustainability, innovation, in terms of traceability programs, climate-smart agriculture, and so on. So agribusiness offers really a lot of opportunities for partnerships between European and Ghanaian companies. There are always challenges, and these challenges will have to be overcome. The third sector, which I believe also is very important, is the digital transformation, especially in light of the 24/7 economy, which has been mentioned by Prof. and by Cheryl. And I think this is, it offers a lot of opportunities for investors, but I think there are also some challenges There's the part that government has to do, there's a part that the private sector would also have to get into. And when it comes to 24/7 economy, there should be a demand that is strong enough to drive the companies, manufacturing companies, service companies, logistic companies into increasing their shifts and heading towards a 24/7 economy. Then we have the energy, renewable energy, I think is also important, but there are some few policy issues that need to be clarified. With the new government, we'll have to see how that will have to be. We need a dialogue on how to improve the policy set up to make it more investor friendly. And finally, the mining sector, like Ms. Cheryl O'Toole has mentioned, is very important with a few challenges, and the challenges are also the side of the local content that has to be mentioned when it comes to attracting foreign investments. So these are the 5-6 key sectors I believe is important, and also important for creating partnerships between European companies and Ghanaian companies. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Nicholas. I think we would all agree that the 4 main areas that have come up consistently have to do with agribusiness or agro-processing, infrastructure or construction, renewable energy, of course the 24-hour economy too has featured prominently already. I have a question about how government should even be thinking about identifying, before we get to identifying those particular sectors, what the thought process should be. Why are these sectors the ones that should be prioritized based on the resources, the scarcity of resources we have, and the investment climate as we currently have it? But before we get there, we'll come back to that. But before we get there, let's hear from the government side. We have someone who will be representing an entire government-backed fund that deals with small and medium-scale enterprises, assisting them by investing in them. We also have, of course, the chief regulator for foreign direct investments in Ghana, the Ghana Investment Promotion Center. So let me hear from Mr. Aziz first on how the VCTF is thinking about which priority sectors, right, to be investing in.
So, in Venture Capital Trust Fund, I think most of the panelists have talked about the key sectors that we usually invest in. But I think there's one critical sector that we haven't talked about, which is the human capital. We so many times do investments and then the managerial capability is not there. And then everybody here would attest to it. Even in construction, you get to that Togolese artisans are much more better refined than Ghanaians. So these, I think everything has been said, but the key factor that will back all this growth agenda is a human resource. We might do projects and then we'll end up employing foreigners to come and do it, and still our job creation wouldn't happen. So I think that the last step to everything in terms of the agriculture and then manufacturing sector, the transport and everything is a human capital. And then the educational sector is what will back up. So I think for us, Prof said, is the enabler, and then government had to look at this so I think that's the missing piece in these things, because we do a bit of everything. But at the end, there's a key gap between education of what we produce out and what is needed in the industries. So for investment side, we do a little bit of everything of this. So we have invested in schools, we have invested in universities, and we have invested in capacity building colleges that bring out or channel out refined or astute skills that are needed in the industry. Yeah, so basically.
Okay, so the human resource capital or investments is just as important. It ties everything in, and we shouldn't be neglecting that. Let's hear from GIPC. What are our priority areas? It's for the benefit of our audience, particularly those online and also those in person here, people who are thinking of investing in various businesses in Ghana. What are the priority areas so far for the GIPC going forward?
All right, thank you. Good morning, and good morning to our colleagues online. I think that the panelists have mentioned a lot, and especially Prof has spoken to I don't know what else to add or subtract. But for us as a center, agriculture and agribusiness and agro-processing is our top priority. Adding value to the produce that we produce on our farms is essential. But we also want to encourage people to go into the actual farming, because we need to produce to be able to get the raw materials needed to feed industry. So agric, first of all, and agriculture. And under agric, of course, there is livestock, there's fish farming, and we have the whole Volta Lake that will link into the Volta Economic Corridor. About 2 million hectares of land, arable land, that can be cultivated. And also, the plan is to set up agro-processing industries along that line. So to be able to import whatever machinery or whatever raw materials it is, put it in the water, the Volta Lake as it is, and go all the way up. And we'll have all these plantations along and the factories also along to ship the finished products back down to the ports for export. So agric and agribusiness, also pharmaceuticals, like Prof said, light manufacturing. And we at the GIPC are looking not only at the Ghana market, we are looking at the West African market, we are looking at the African market through the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. So establishing manufacturing base here is a sector we are pushing, production of APIs and the normal drugs and everything that feeds into the manufacturing sector. We had a very growing middle class, and so accommodation, or what we call housing. So looking at the housing sector, building and construction sector, infrastructure sector, and then the ICT sector also. We have a lot of coders coming up. We have a lot of this whole AI. We want to, like Cheryl mentioned, channel these energies into health tech, into agri-tech. There are a lot of opportunities in this sector, so we are pushing the ICT sector too. We at the GIPC are looking to identify a lot of these projects across the country. So we recently launched a project we call the Investor Opportunity Mapping Project, where we are going to be on the ground in all the districts of the country to identify these projects, fish them out, package these projects into bankable projects for marketing activities. So very soon you'll hear from us going across all the regions in a roadshow, what we call the regional investment roadshows. We are going to be starting hopefully in the last quarter of the year, and every region will be of focus, because we see there are gems, hidden investment opportunities in all of these regions that we need to highlight and market. And after we've gone through the country, we hope to next year invite the international community, the domestic community, to a huge investment forum that will showcase the whole of Ghana and publish and make available all of these projects that we have identified as we've gone through all these districts. So the sectors are wide, and that's what we are doing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I think our panelists deserve a round of applause so far for everything that they've explained. I like the level of specificity you brought to it, because if we say something like agribusiness, it's quite big, it's quite broad. Where exactly, what actual subsectors are we looking at, for example? And I also like the fact that in terms of communicating the opportunities for investment, you're intending on doing, say, a roadshow. So like I mentioned earlier, before we get to the level of identifying the particular areas or sectors, private sector again, how do you think government should be thinking about when going through that process of identifying? What should the thought processes be to ensure that all these fantastic projects that we've heard from VCTF, we've heard from GIPC, the ideas that they have, so that the end products of purpose, the businesses we are targeting, first of all, are aware, right? So we're looking at how they can identify and communicate these opportunities. We'll hear again from Wisdom and Cheryl, then we'll come to Prof again, and then we'll go to Nicholas. What should the thought processes be before the government gets to the point of identifying the priority areas that they would like to invest in, and how should government also seek to be communicating it in order to achieve the purpose for all these great ideas that government has?
Right. Thank you, Na. The question I will take in two parts. How government should be identifying the opportunities. I would say there is no point reinventing the wheel. Prof, for instance, has made references to studies that are backed by data. So empirical studies would tell us where the opportunities are. Then we can have a good sync with what the Ghana Investment Promotion Center is doing, the data we can get from the Office of the Registrar of Companies, the Ghana Revenue Authority, and the local assemblies. The local assemblies, Prof referred to, also come around to ask for their pound of flesh. But for every local area you operate, you need to obtain a business operating permit. And they gather data on what you are doing there. In fact, in that local authority, you would have officers come to your site to inspect. So whilst the Office of the Registrar of Companies would have taken these details on paper, would have the data sitting there, the local assembly officer would actually come to site, and they would write a report before giving you a fee for your permit. All those areas are opportunities for data points. And once we are syncing, and I think this point has been made right from morning, that if our agencies and our authorities are working together, we should be able to harvest, mine this data, and identify where the opportunities are, where are people going to. So in economics, the players are seen to be reasonable persons, and they would go where the opportunities are. They will go where the enablers are. They will go where the profit margins speak. So we would not need to reinvent the wheel. And I would want to give kudos to what the GIPC launched just last month, the Investment Opportunity Mapping Project, where they are looking to go across the 261 districts of the country to collect data and map the opportunities we have across. This is a step up on what the GIPC has been doing, and I think that is great. So once we have a project, we have a great database website where investors can access data, then we would be able to collect the data. We've collected the data and we are making it accessible. One key point I want to make before I give the mic to the next speaker would be, whilst we are collecting this data, we should also be careful to collect what the outcome of the actual investment is. So over time, we show the opportunities, but where do people actually go to? Where do investors go to? That is one key point, and we should be having that data. If we can build on this investment opportunity mapping project, and we can come back here 5 years' time, where we have mapped out the opportunities, and we've also mapped out the actual investments that investors have made. That would give us a great source of insight, because these opportunities change over time. They change with the changing economic climate. They change if it's extractive. It changes with the availability of resources. There are changes that come about because commodity prices have changed. Global commodity prices have changed. So tracking the actual investments post-identification would be key. And then my second point would be, we should not only focus on new investments coming from outside the country. We should equally focus on additional investments that businesses already in the country make. So we should also be tracking the expansion. I know the GIPC currently would typically register foreign investors. It is optional, and a lot of fully owned Ghanaian businesses do not know that you can actually be a member of the GIPC. I think we should have more focus on that aspect. If we have more focus on that aspect and there is a bit more drive from the GIPC, so the investment forums that are run in Dubai, etc., if we can have a bit more of those across our regions, then our existing businesses, whether Ghanaian owned or foreign owned, can understand these opportunities and get into those areas. And the expansion in investments, a simple principle around the Pareto principle, it's easier to have an existing company that knows the terrain in Ghana to make a 500 million investment than to bring someone who knows close to nothing about Ghana to make that same investment. So I'm saying that I have met a lot of clients who are willing to look at investments in other areas, but the question is, what are the incentives that would make them add $1 more to Ghana and not take that to Cote d'Ivoire? So these two areas we should be looking at strongly. Thank you.
So data, the decisions should be based on data. There should be an effective monitoring system. I'm glad you mentioned the angle of ensuring that we are not only targeting new entrants, as it were, for both venture capital and GIPC, not just new entrants, but also how we can help those who are we've already invested and how we can expand the investment. We'll come to that, your strategies on that. But for now, let's hear from Cheryl. Again, we're looking at how we can identify the priority areas we should be investing in as governments, and how do you think it should be communicated so that it achieves the purpose for which we have identified them in the first place?
Okay, thank you. I think to add to what Wisdom said, so I would look at two areas of identifying the key priority areas. So first is, I think the obvious area of, I mentioned, if you looked at Q1 GDP results, we saw that the biggest contributors to GDP at the end of Q1 for this year were three main industries. So we have the industry sector, we have the agricultural sector, and the services sector. So obviously, I feel like for the government, the work has been done already. Now, if these are the three main contributors, the argument can be made that a lot more focus needs to be placed on improving, for example, in agriculture, food security, improving mechanisms that improve agriculture in that area. I think the second point I would mention is, and it's very germane that we're having this conversation in this setting, we're partnering with the UKGCC to do this. Now, the UKGCC, as you know, is a chamber of commerce, right? So it's the partnership between the UK and Ghana. And what the UKGCC, as well as the UK government does, is it collates what we call issues that businesses in their membership complain about. So what I mean by that is, so for example, I know that two key issues that members of the UKGCC, UK businesses complain about is high taxation. So there are too many taxes, onerous taxes that businesses, I think Wisdom mentioned, that businesses have to grapple with. And businesses find that to be challenging. There's also onerous minimum capital requirements for foreign businesses who want to set up in Ghana. So that's another issue that I know that the UK partners, stakeholders complain about. Similarly, a lot of the other chambers, the American chamber, Russian chamber, etc., also pick up these issues from the businesses and investors that they partner with. So one area that the government can look at is, the work has already been done. What are businesses complaining about? What can they do in that sense? Get all government agencies, the GIPC, GEPA together to resolve those issues for them. So I think that is on the one side. Now on the communication side, I believe that the government already does this. So obviously, a lot of these agencies publish, policies that they come up with on their websites. But I think that there's also a case to be made, maybe I'm biased, for partnering with outfits such as Deloitte. Because obviously, we have a lot of businesses that we work with, investors that we deal with on the daily. And what better avenue to get some of these, the information that the businesses talk about, and then even disseminate than the government partnering with private firms like Deloitte. So that would be.
Right, so I'm glad that you re-emphasized Wisdom's point about basing those decisions on data, the hard data. And for you, the UKGCC is already doing a very good job with other various chambers of commerce providing or collating that data. And also, again, of course, working with some private sector consultancy firms like Deloitte who can share their insights based on experience they've had so far. So we'll be hearing from Prof. Prof has spoken about, I think you mentioned Taiwan and some other countries and how they effectively identify specific areas and which essentially turn their economies around. Again, for Ghana, before we even get to identifying, how should the government be thinking? And once we do the identification, how should they be communicated? The priority areas, as mentioned, in order to achieve the purpose for which we are making those huge investments.
Okay, so every government exists to ensure that its residents or citizens have a better standard of living. So, I mean, that is the basic reason why we have governments. Otherwise, what's the point? And so, if you look at our history, we have not done too well in terms of increasing our GDP per capita. Oil came in. I'm an economist, but I don't focus too much on oil because that resource is very exhaustible. And the real sectors that should drive our economy to offer the jobs, to improve our standards of living, is what will not get exhausted. And that is the real sector that I'm talking about. So I don't even talk about oil. I mean, Nigeria has had oil for all this while. I don't see anything better there for us to have hopes about. And so, if you look at our history, our economy has not transformed. And we are struggling because of that. And so, any government policy that will seek to transform our economy should be the focus of whatever intention they have. When I say our economy has to be transformed, what do I mean? Not just growing GDP, 6%, 11%, 5%. And if you look at the way our growth is even not stable, it should tell you that there's something wrong with it. And it's because we have failed since independence to grow the agricultural sector in a way that agriculture will do so well. And then industrialization takes over. And when industrialization has done well, services take over, and then we move into high service growth. Unfortunately for us, agriculture didn't develop well. We tried import substitution industrialization, we got it wrong, and our services is driving our GDP. There's something wrong with our transformation. And not until we come back to start the whole process, no amount of interventions or encouragement to private sector would work. 60 years since, it's still not working. We need to come back. Now, what do we need to do? We need to diversify our economy. Our economy is too narrow. Our production base is too narrow. We import almost everything. And as the growing middle class comes up, we are becoming much more import dependent rather than being self-sufficient. I mean, if I ask in this room, and people will be very, very honest with me, when was the last time you entered our normal markets where our farmers' output are sold? You go to the shopping malls and you shop your oranges and your bananas from the shopping mall. 90% of those are imported. So even the food that we eat, the basic fruits, we are becoming import dependent. And it's a norm. I mean, when a country is growing in terms of GDP, you see that happening because they know that there's a growing middle class who would opt for those things. So we need to diversify our production base and move into what we call high value addition. And in those situations, should our farmers produce, I mean, I always say that agriculture and the support we give to agriculture will not make any sense if we don't have demand for what they produce. And the demand is not being driven by the market, but the demand should be intentional. Our food distribution company that used to exist is collapsed. So when our farmers do well, we punish them because their output is sold for next to nothing. I've seen a bunch of plantain being sold for 2 cedis in the last 4 years, whole bunch, in the areas where plantain is grown. And you come to Accra, it's being sold for over 50 cedis. I mean, what is wrong with us? We need to begin to add value to the extent that we can have all year round the supply of these goods. When we give demand for agricultural output, our farmers will increase their productivity. But because now when they increase their productivity, we punish them. You go to a market and you buy a full bucket of tomatoes for 20 cedis in Accra. Go to where the farmer sold the tomatoes. That full bucket will not be more than 4 cedis. Is that the sort of agriculture that we need our economy to grow now? So we need to go back and then see how we support agriculture to grow. Because any industrialization would rely so much on agricultural output to add value. Even the simple manufacturers, plastics, they need rubber. And that is gotten from what? Agriculture. So we need to diversify our economy. When you diversify, like the East Asians did, by focusing on areas that they thought they could be able to export, then we can produce for our import substitutes. The 1D, 1F, 24-hour economy, good policies. The only problem is that it is being couched out of party manifestos. And when parties change, those good initiatives will die. Meanwhile, they are the same thing with different names. That is why development is stuck, because we do not allow institutions like the National Development Planning Commission to drive our process of development. We allow our parties to catch everything in their manifestos and take it on as their babies. And even in terms of implementation, favor their party people in implementation, so that the opposition sees that as a party thing. There's no reason why when they come to power, they'll continue it. They'll change the name of it, refocus. And so we are not consistent even in supporting private sector. So the private businesses, when these initiatives come on, they are scared to join, because in no time when there's a change in government, I know of 1D, 1F companies who are complaining now that once there was a change, they fear for their future. Because there's something coming up called 24-hour economy, which I tell the politicians is the same thing. You want to do import substitution industrialization, you want to do export promotion, continue that 1D, 1F, where the implementation was wrong, take it out, come up with new ideas and continue. A lot of private sector see a consistency in our policy. And if FDI will come in, when policy is not consistent, the business model is looking at a horizon of about 25, 50 years. We'll not invest in an economy where every 8 years things change. It's not going to happen. So that is something we need to focus on in diversify our economy's production base and our exports. We need also to invest, like you said, in human capital. We've done so well with the free SHS, which is not bad. I mean, over the last 20 years, Ghana's human capital has improved from a low scale to medium scale, moderate scale, which is good for light manufacturing. That's what we need. What we need now is to tailor measure education to the needs of industry. I mean, it's very, the firms will tell you, when you employ your graduates, they are very good. We need to retrain them. The cost of retraining them is too much for us. And so we cannot. We need to make sure that our educational institutions are churning out the graduates that we need for, not for working in the banks, but going into direct production, real sector activities. Every graduate wants to work in a bank. Even those who are trained in the consumer sciences, agriculture and stuff, do not want to go and work in companies that are in that area. They want to work in bank. People go to tech, they do engineering, they do what, and then you find them in the bank. I mean, what sort of training are we giving to the youth? We need to focus on giving them the skills that will be required in industry to support them. Then also technology. It is good Ghana is focusing on digitalization, key. We need to build the soft infrastructure that would enable that. In other words, we are good with our internet penetration. I mean, people have more than 2 mobile phones. If you get the data from the central bank, it's good. I mean, so people are becoming much more, as the days go by, people have become much more this thing with technology. We need to now begin to invest in local appropriate technology. There are young men and women in this country that when they get the support, will develop apps and production processes that would improve productivity for some of these simple things that we do. To what extent are we supporting these young men and women? I mean, we are talking about STEM. all of these are good things. But when they leave the university, when they go to the US, there's a whole sector that is waiting for them to take them on, support them, for them to use what they've learned to develop new things. Some of these new technologies that we are seeing all over the world are developed by young men and women who are trained in engineering and sciences to use the minds that they have to become very innovative. We don't have any of that here. We talk about STEM, brilliant maths and science quiz. I mean, go and look at the guys who excel there. Go and look at what they are doing now. Some of them are in the banks. Some of them are doing totally different things when they were very smart minds that we could have supported to build technologies for us. And then also to ensure that the business environment, like I keep on saying, do we support a labor-intensive sort of production, or are we going capital-intensive? We need to be supporting labor-intensive technology in the business environment. We need to provide incentives for firms that are using good technology to employ more. Because when people get employed, they pay taxes, government raises revenue, revenue goes back into the system through expenditure on critical infrastructure to expand our economy. That is the way we can develop. That is what we call transformation.
Thanks, Prof. I think if I allow you to go on, we will have an entire thesis here. But I mean, your points have been well made. Diversifying the economy, investing in human capital, those are critical. Those are critical areas that we would need to look at. We'll hear from Nicholas shortly online. But I will hear from Mr. Aziz and also from Kesi Chapong. I'm more interested in what the strategies are for those you have already invested in, how you are expanding the investment rather than just focusing on new entrants. And also, in our next round of questions, we will delve a little bit more into two major developments that have come up. The first one is, well, a bit far behind. That is the AFCFTA, the Free Continental Trade Area. And we also have the most recent 24-hour economy policy. I have some very specific questions for each of us based on our level of expertise. But for now, we'll hear from Nicholas online. If Nicholas, you want to weigh in on where we are discussing, particularly on how the government should be thinking about selecting or identifying areas that they would like to invest in, and how it should be communicated in order to achieve the purpose for which the identification was done.
Identification of opportunities. Government has good access to a lot of opportunities that they can promote, and that is through the GIPC, and also being identified at the Ministry of Trade and Industry and Agriculture, where I've been interacting with them. They have a lot of departments working on supply chains, identifying the weak and the good parts where opportunities for investments can be done. But what is very important and key for government is to look at industrialization. Industrialization is the one where we can attract investments. And for three reasons. One of them is bringing technology, the second one, bringing capital, resources that Ghana would need, and also bringing the skills transferred in terms of upgrading the skills of the Ghanaian youth and the Ghanaian workforce. Now, let me just put this aside in terms of what government has as opportunities and concentrate maybe on the communication level, because that is what would be interesting for investors. Investors will look at opportunities, they'll say, oh yes, fine, but let's look at the business environment, let's look at the investment environment. Is it conducive for us? Is it interesting for us? And so it's extremely important for government to leverage on the GIPC Act that is coming up hopefully very soon, and show clear incentives on each of those opportunities that are being presented for investment opportunities. A second point would be to define very clearly and promote the priority sectors that we've been discussing. We all agree on which ones they are. But this should be backed by solid market research. You need to convince an investor that this is the opportunities and there is good data that is behind it, and it presents a good opportunity for me or whoever as an investor to get in and get into that market and get into a particular sector. then those opportunities need to be presented in a bankable way. I mean, we need the financing package should be also present. I mean, investors look at return on what they're putting into it. But also, I believe the GIPC is doing a good part of that work and should be spearheading those types of projects that they would like to promote. So that any investor would approach the GIPC and have access to a panoply or a portfolio of opportunities that would be relevant for them and interesting for them to invest. Finally, we should also look at the FCFTA. Secretariat is being hosted in Ghana. So there are also a lot of opportunities there to work with the Secretariat and see how we can attract investors, not just European ones, but also African ones, South African, Morocco, Egypt. There are a lot of interesting sectors for them. And in terms of communication, we need to give the assurance to investors that, yes, we have a nice project, but once you invest, we also will make sure that things will not be cumbersome, things will be facilitated for you in terms of we'll encourage exports, we'll encourage trade facilitation, and of course, if you have grievances as an investor, we will come and solve your issues and help you all the way through. And that, again, this is where I also see the GIPC playing a crucial role in the aftercare for investors. Okay, thank you, that was it. The communication, I think, is very important from government side in terms of promoting and attracting investments.
Yeah, thank you, Nicholas. I think one factor that has run throughout everything that has been said so far is the data. Decisions based on data is critical. It's non-negotiable, as it were. I think it's also very good that we have dialogues like this where the government actually shows up, and also it's a good way to effectively communicate the plans or the goodies you have in store for people who would want to be investing in specific areas. But for now, let's hear from Aziz. Kwame, what are you doing as the Venture Capital Trust Fund, for example, to expand a little more on the investments you currently already have, rather than just focusing on new entrants? And again, just to remind our in-person and online audience, please, you may ask questions. I'm not the only one asking questions here. It's a conversation meant to benefit you. So please feel free. If you have any questions, you can jot them down. Right after this round of questions, we'll give you opportunities to ask questions. Those online as well, please feel free to type them out. I'll be prompted and I'll read out the questions for you. Aziz.
Okay, so before I get to your question, I think there has been a talk about economic transformation, right? And then we have touched base on agriculture and then its magnitude of transforming the economy. But there's a time bomb coming. And then if you don't necessarily take advantage of it early, I think Ghana will be caught up in the mix, because globally, prices of commodities are dropping. And what that means is that our earnings will drop if you don't do the economic transformation early. So that's a risk coming. And then there's a World Bank report on it. There's a whole report basically on that commodity prices are dropping. So it is in no good, even in our interest, to be exporting raw materials outside. And then when we look at, when we take key examples from the Arabs and then the developed countries, they're even diverting from the raw materials. So I mean, even for our sustainability in the long run, we should be able to look at how we should tactically transform our economy away from agriculture. That said, in terms of mobilization, local capital mobilization, I think I did do my audience and then my guests here for explaining and then educating stuff about Venture Capital Trust Fund. So the essence of Venture Capital Trust Fund being established was purposely for local capital mobilization. So government at that time wanted how best it could be an enabler to attract local capital in the market. So in 2004, they established the Venture Capital Trust Fund by an act of parliament And then with the basically 2 core mandates, one is to invest in fund managers who then invest in businesses. And then the second is to develop the private equity venture capital industry. This too has been used in developed countries to pool capital or pool local resources for their development. And then the model is simple. We have a private people who are business-led people who have the technical skills to invest in businesses, but they don't have the money. They go around to leverage and then attract money. So government, in its sense, established a fund of fund, which is a venture capital trust fund. So we set with capital, and then in turn, they go around and raise funds. So till date, we have invested to the tune of 170 million Ghana cedis into these fund managers. And then with our money, they have been able to mobilize local capital with foreign FDIs to the tune of more than 700 million Ghana cedis. So this is a typical example of how government has played a key role in enabling or attracting money to be invested. And all this money went into Ghanaian businesses. That is a fact. And then this is a kind of how do you call it, initiative that government has taken. So what we typically do is that on the average, when we invest 1 cedi, it is able to attract 4 times what we have invested. So we have, in most of our funds that we have invested, and usually we are the first anchor. When we say the first anchor, we are the first people to put our money on the table and say, we are backing this fund, so go and raise money. And with that leverage, it gives other investors the comfort to come on board. So we have KFWs, we have the MasterCard Foundation, we have most FDIs who have invested in these funds with us. And all these funds go into businesses who are much more transformative in nature.
Thanks, Aziz. I'll come back to you with another question. We have an online question that is very specific to our representatives from government here. We'll come to it. We'll come to it shortly.
So for the next one, in terms of communicating,
yes,
there's this thing. Why don't we do the flip side? What do investors want? Because that's what necessarily we do at Venture. What do investors want to invest in? Rather than packaging what we have and then sending to them. Let's look at what we have, then we package our businesses and SMEs to suit what they want. Because currently there are a lot of impact funds outside looking for investment. So it's just about how to tell your story well, how to package your businesses well to tell the story that you want to. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So going from where Aziz ended, there's quite a number of funds around looking for projects to invest in. And so we're encouraging businesses to be ready for such funds. Being ready is a whole conversation that we'll have on another day. But as far as GIPC is concerned, what we are doing to retain the investors here, we have a whole division set up for investor aftercare and grievance. And this team is dedicated to the issues of investors. We have focal persons in almost all of the MDAs that, for instance, we have a call from a company with an issue of ECG. We have a top officer in ECG that we relate with to make sure that the issues are resolved. And we have quite a number of success stories to publish. We usually publish these on our websites. So we don't want problems to develop into issues and to be escalated. We are trying to be there with the investor along their journey so that as issues come up, we do our best to resolve it and to solve it. We also have a monitoring and outreach department that goes out to look at how businesses are doing and to check and to ensure that they are investing according to the laws of the country, because that's also very important. That businesses abide by the laws that of the country that they set up to come and do. We also are facilitating and streamlining our documentation processes. So for companies that have been dealing with us, they realize that post-COVID, you don't have to walk into GIPC to apply for a service. We have an online system, and I think Deloitte and Co can attest to this, that all you need to do is to send us an email with the documents that are required, and we relate to you back and forth via email. Even payments are made by you, and then you show us evidence of payment, and you just pick up your certificates or your letter. So now that is usually the only point at which the investors come to us. And this has made the life of a lot of our investors easier. The back and forths have been cut very short, and we are looking to improve it. We are reviewing our forms, we are reviewing our requirements, hoping to make it actually very simple and easier to obtain services from the GIPC. Then I'll talk about our law that we are reviewing, because I knew that question would come. So let me so this law was to be passed last year, but it couldn't go through the process till the parliament expired. So we have reinitiated the process, and very soon we'll be going out engaging stakeholders on the drafts that we have. We have comments from the Attorney General, so we are working actively on this law. And like Ms. Otud mentioned, we are looking at relooking the investor minimum equity requirement thresholds, and hoping to take some away, hoping to bring some very low to the barest minimum, because we have to be sensitive to some of the stakeholder issues on ground. So we hopefully don't ask me about timelines, but we are as eager as you are to get this passed, because the product Ghana is better with a new investment law, and we are selling the product Ghana, so we are as interested in getting this passed. My CEO is on our legal department every day concerning this particular, but you know the processes, so we are going through it quickly, and then we'll be engaging stakeholders on it soon.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the new GIPC law, because I think most of our audience will be interested in how it's going to affect them. You know, what are the new things? And I'm glad you mentioned about reducing the investment, the threshold for investments that is required, and maybe taking some of them out as it were. But maybe we'll come back to this and get a little more detail on that. But we have some online questions so far. Most of them, as you would expect, they are interested particularly in what incentives that you have in place or are thinking of putting in place. For some of them have very specific industries they are talking about there. Some of them are talking about hospitality industry, right? Particularly for those that are seeking foreign investment to say expand their hotels or expand the services that they provide. So quickly from Mr. Aziz and then from Kasia Japan again, what are the strategies that GIPC, for example, has in place to improve or incentivize more foreign direct investments? Of course, including everything. And also, of course, if you have some examples from the new law that you are thinking about, please feel free to share. Then we'll move on to 24-hour economy quickly, and then we'll talk about after briefly.
So from my side, right, from venture capital transfer, the money is ready already. Because most of the
money is ready?
Yes, so most of the funds that we have committed to, the funds are ready. We have Ebankase, right, so we have Oasis Capital, who has raised, who is raising $100 million.
Wow.
And then we have closed, the first close is around $35 million, currently looking for like opportunities to invest in. So all what you have to do is to go to their website. That is the like Oasis Africa Fund 2. They are currently investing. We have Meripa Impact Fund 1. That is a 230 million Ghana City fund. So what we realized is that there was a mismatch in terms of the dollar and then the city investment, because we are in city, so we are in Ghana, so the local currency, and then there was a mismatch in terms of returns and fund performance. So we asked how to leverage money, developed a local CD fund. So we currently have two funds who are local, and then they have all closed. They have money sitting down for investment. All what you have to do is to reach to them. So one also is Injaro. So if you just have to Google or check our website. They have their contacts and everything. They have the money ready. All what you have to do, you have to go through the process, and then they will look at you.
I think it's, you see, that's why the communication bit is very important, because I'm not sure how many people who are seeking to invest in businesses in Ghana are aware of these funds that you oversee, for example. And I think it's why the communication is critical. And when Mr. Kessie was talking about having an aftercare and grievance department, for example, I don't know how many investors are even aware that there's departments like that. Is this something that, for example, you communicate to them when they're going through their registration process, so they know that they can always come back to you? They don't see you as, you know, just a regulator that is collecting money from them, but someone who actually wants to see them succeed in their businesses in Ghana. So we've overhatched that element of communicating effectively. But for now, again, the question we have so far, what are the incentives, what are the new strategies that you are putting in place that you think businesses should be aware of across various industries?
Okay, thank you. So yeah, investors are informed of our aftercare service right from the start, and officers are actually assigned to them. So after about 6 months, you get a call from us. Talking about incentives, so what it is that there are currently a lot of incentives that companies can benefit from. There are locational incentives for manufacturing companies where you can pay 50% of corporate income tax based on where you are located, or 75% of corporate income tax based on where you are located. For agro-processing companies, is 1% CIT for up to 5 years. Okay, these incentives are in various laws, and we are working to publish these incentives. For instance, for the GIPC, our laws guarantee against expropriation, our law guarantee against assures you of transfer of dividends and the likes. We are encouraging manufacturing, so for instance, there's no equity requirement for setting up a manufacturing company, and that's an incentive. But we are encouraging people to look at these sectors. There are special rates when it comes to tree crop farming, ranging from 1 to 10 years. For waste processing, up to 7 years, you pay only 1% corporate tax. So we have all of this information on our social media handles, on our website, and we try to push it out, publish it, make investors aware of these incentives that are available. Talking about the law, we are looking at proposing some new incentives, like Ms. Otu mentioned, which will be performance-based incentives. We are looking at working with the Ministry of Finance under the Exemptions Act to have policy-specific, industry-specific incentives for the various industries, working also very closely with the Ministry of Trade, Agribusiness and Industries in coming up with policies for the pharmaceutical sector, textiles and garment sectors. All of these have incentives in these policies, which we'll be marketing when these policies are ready and have been passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's quickly talk about 24-hour economy, right? I think it's the freshest thing that is being touted. We've seen it's being launched. Obviously, we are still getting to understand the details as we go along. But now, I just want you to share perspectives, based on all of us areas of expertise. And I'll start with Cheryl, right? As one who has worked the financial aspect, you've worked with a lot of companies, helping them, streamline their finances, putting them together for various projects they want to run in Ghana. What would you say are some of the risks, based on your understanding so far, the 24-hour economy policy? What would you say are some of the risks that almost immediately stand out to you for an investor who, or an audience, a member of the audience who is perhaps considering taking advantage of the policy, for example? What are some of the risks, based on your own advisory work and experience so far, that you think they need to pay attention to? We would come to wisdom on the regulatory and compliance aspect, and then we would hear from Prof again, Nicholas, and then we would end with Mr. Aziz and Kwame.
Okay, thank you now. I think the first thing I'll talk about, or the key thing I'll talk about, is businesses are concerned about. So there are a number of businesses, for example, who are very interested in taking advantage of the rebates available if businesses, for example, are able to run more shifts than they currently run, the government has proposed that there are some tax rebates that are available for such businesses. So, for example, if currently, let's say a pharmaceutical company runs 1 shift and decides to go to 2 shifts, there's a CIT tax rate. I guess Wisdom, you can perhaps give me the details, but because Wisdom is a tax expert. But based on the number of cycles, shifts that a company decides to run, the government has mentioned that they will give some rebates. Now, the concern for these businesses is that one of the concerns that keeps coming up is that, so for example, if I own a pharmaceutical company and I want to run more shifts than I currently run, what does that mean? Because these businesses are looking to scale up in terms of revenue, production, etc. So they are concerned that what happens to costs, labor costs, electricity costs, etc. What we have advised some businesses is to say that if you decide to run more shifts than you currently run, perhaps move your production facilities or majority or the bulk of your production to the evening shifts. Because what it means is that you're paying, the government has said that you pay less electricity at that time. For example, you pay less electricity on your production at that time. So that is something that we've advised businesses to look at, and also the government to look at. It's an incentive for businesses looking to run more cycles in that way. Also, just across the entire value chain, it's important for businesses to look at the kind of opportunities that exist, because running a 24-hour economy would mean that there are opportunities in the areas of logistics. There's opportunities across the entire value chain and public transport, even security, for example, that needs to be looked at. And so there are some concerns in those areas as well. And so they'll need to be, and the gaps need to be closed for such businesses. Again, a lot of SMEs are looking to go into this area, and we do a lot of work supporting SMEs to scale up. And so what are the incentives for small businesses that want to improve their production cycle, increase their production cycle rather? So there's some concerns that there might be a lot of capital that will be required to scale up. So what support is available for such businesses? Beyond the financing provided by banks, etc., the government also has some commitments to make in supporting small businesses to scale up. So these are some of the concerns that have come up.
Right. Just to remind us again that you may ask questions if you feel like it. If you have any pressing question you think we are not addressing in this conversation, please feel free to jot it down. You'll be given an opportunity to ask very soon. Wisdom, I know clients are probably already coming to you asking questions about how they can take advantage of this new policy that we are rolling out. Almost immediately, what are some of the regulatory and maybe compliance issues that you can foresee already with the implementation? Particularly for somebody who is thinking of taking advantage, what are the things to look out for? And also, what are some of the major challenges clients are already coming to you with concerning how they can take advantage of the 24-hour economy?
All right, thank you. So I'll take it from a number of angles. So one, there is a big focus on tax incentives, and if you heard from Kese earlier, we have a plethora of tax incentives in the laws already. And a question that keeps coming to me is that have we fully utilized these incentives? If you look at from manufacturing to agro-processing to waste processing to livestock to real estate, have we fully utilized these? And that's where, again, data comes to mind. What lessons have we learned from running these incentives over time? One typical area I would just want to flag is the real estate, and the incentive we have there is almost a tax holiday for 5 years if you go into low-cost housing. Over the past 6 to 10 years, I've had a number of clients ask me about this incentive, but I've not been able to get one single client through. So there is something wrong with how we are implementing it, and it's important that as we go into the 24-hour economy and what it offers, it promises, we also learn lessons from what implementation of the various incentives have been over time. And for me, a key risk would be what Prof has highlighted earlier. How sustainable would this be over time? Definitely, the whole 24-hour economy policy is exciting. It's transformational. If you look at the breadth of the programs and the thinking behind the policy, it encompasses the entire spectrum of the economy, and it's exciting. But if there's anything I've learned in my experience, excitement alone does not crack it. It has to do with the hard work that comes with the actual implementation, ensuring that the administrative bottlenecks are not, we deal with those administrative bottlenecks. We deal with the efficiency that we want to see. And there are bright examples in the public sector that we can speak to. But I think that the issue would be how an investor gets that feeling across the various authorities. So Casey talks about some brilliant initiatives the GIPC has put in place, and I can attest to them. I can sit, well, it's not good for business, but I can sit in my office and renew for GIPC, register for GIPC, etc. And that is great. Do we get the same feeling across? There are some offices you still get the frustration. But if we are getting a consistent feeling across, then we are arriving at where we need to be. Specifics across the regulatory landscape, these policies are proposals as they are now. We have a brilliant 24-hour economy document, very detailed, which is also very good. But there are actions that need to be taken. We would need to put a lot of these into law before we can speak to them. Or we can say they are operational. For instance, the incentives around running 3 shifts. You get between 2 to 6% rebate on your corporate tax, which is great. And the whole idea of aligning tax incentives to specific targets is something that is worth praising. As Prof has mentioned, if we are looking at lessons from the Asian tigers, tying tax incentives to actual production, this is a clear example that the 24-hour economy policy is looking to bring. So if you are running 3 shifts, you get an incentive. If you employ to a particular number, you get an incentive. That's great. So we are looking forward to seeing the bills come through and the stakeholder engagement, so that stakeholders from private sector, consultants, stakeholders across can make inputs, so we can have these laws become actionable laws. So just like various facets in Ghana, our laws are not the issue, but the implementation is the issue. And I hope that when it comes to the 24-hour economy, how we transform implementation, we will do much better than what we have done in the past. Just one area I want to flag, the 24-hour economy proposes to have specialized economic zones, for instance, for specialized sectors, etc. Again, I would say that we would have no business setting up a new agency, center, or authority, as Kessie would soon be. The Free Zones Authority has run, and that concept is very similar to a Free Zones area. The Free Zones Authority has run free zones for decades, and all the challenges that these zones come with, they have faced, and hopefully overcome a number of them. We've raised them. These are very well documented, where some unscrupulous investors come in as A by the time they are doing the 10 years, they turn and become AB. So my point is that these zones, whatever we want to call them, they should be run by the existing bureaucracy that we already have, so that the lessons, the institutional lessons and expertise can be utilized to implement these policies at lower cost than setting up new bureaucracies to rerun a lot of these policies. And if we are looking at things from these perspectives, the effectiveness and efficiency will be there, and businesses would also be able to see the continuity when it comes to dealing with government.
Thank you, Wisdom, for that. I think I like the point you made about really we have enough flaws, as it were. It's the implementation that we usually have a problem with. So if we could use the existing bureaucracies, that would be useful. We'll be wrapping up shortly, but I just want to do a quick survey. Do we have any questions for our panelists, those of us here in person? By show of hands, okay. We have 3 questions. I'll come to you shortly. But before that, Nicholas, if you're online, as a CEO, right, of a business chain by yourself, what are some of the immediate incentives that you think government should offer to encourage or incentivize people into moving into the 24-hour kind of operation, which is in essence what the 24-hour policy is seeking to do? What are the incentives that you think, from the perspective of a private sector businessman yourself, what do you think government should be putting in place to incentivize businesses to take advantage of this 24-hour policy? Right after we hear from you, we'll come to you, Prof.
My opinion will be based on 2 big hurdles. Can you hear me?
Yes, Nicholas, go ahead.
Yeah. So I have 2 major barriers for the 24/7 economy that are extremely important. The first one is, if I am an investor or I'm a manufacturer and I would like to move to 2 shifts and 3 shifts, well, there's a hypothesis that the market can absorb it. That means that there's a strong demand for the products or the services I'm producing that will allow me and motivate me to produce more or increase my shifts. And that is very important. So when it comes to incentives, I think the incentives have to be around the area of trade facilitation, the reducing the burdens of import and export for companies who are importing for re-exporting. I think there's a lot to do there in terms of policies, and also from the GRA perspective. The second point is, if I'm a businessman and I need to increase my output into 2 shifts by 2 or by 3, if I have to turn to 3 shifts, then I need to invest in more equipment. I need to invest in more people. I need to invest in more training costs. And those factors are because my working capital is going to be put under pressure. I would need more cash flow because I would have to put money up front to finance the increase in shifts, the increase in outputs. And so if we talk about incentivizing that aspect, I think we're talking about tax rebates like some of the colleagues from Deloitte Touche have been mentioning very clearly. But that would have to work. I mean, the law is fine, but when it comes to implementing it, we've seen some miscoordination in the 1D and 1F projects where you have a financial tax rebate, but you're not getting it because the law is not in place or there are some administrative hurdles. So when we come to put a law into effect, it's important that it can be done in a practical way, and that the manufacturer or the producer or the service provider can benefit from it. Thank you.
Right, Nicholas, thank you for that. Prof, very quickly, you mentioned the problem with inconsistency, right, when there's change of government. How do you think the 24-hour economy policy should be managed to ensure that businesses who take advantage from it now or that now can, continue to benefit from it even when there's change in regime or in government going forward?
Okay, so like I've already said, it's the same thing that has been done in the past. The good thing about this is that it's a very good policy that needs much more from the government side to make it work. As a development economist, I've always said that I don't believe in incentives to businesses to reduce their taxes. Reduce the cost of doing business. That is even much more better for them than tax rebates. Because in this part of the world, it is abused. So it has never worked. Yeah. We have exemptions at the port, it's not worked. The World Bank has told us over the years, take down that policy. Because it's even at the discretion of the Minister of Finance. So you get cronies going for the exemptions when they don't need it, or they don't qualify for it. So some of these tax incentives, for me, is not the solution. The solution is reduce the cost of doing business in the country. And the cost that the firms will say, oh, quadruple the tax rebates that you give them. They don't need it. I've interviewed firms for the last 22 years. I've gone there over and over. And most of the firms that enjoy the incentive say, we don't need it. We need you to reduce the cost of doing business in the country. We don't need a tax incentive because, like Nicola just said, the law is there, but you don't even get the incentive. It's too cumbersome. Look, we have duty drawbacks for importers who import inputs to add value. Go and interview the firms. Ask them how many of them have access. There are a whole lot of things in it. I mean, so I don't believe in it. I've, over time, done research and found out that those do not work in this part of the world. They are not automatic. When you say incentive is automatic, as a firm, once I meet that target, I get it. I don't need anybody's discretion. I don't need anybody's approval to have access to it. Otherwise, it's abused. So for me, what the 24-hour economy has to do is to support the firms by reducing the cost of energy, electricity. Not only at night, throughout the day. Because if you don't take care, you only focus at night. A business that runs in the morning will now stop running in the morning and go in the evening. It's not 24-hour economy. Reduce the cost of electricity for those businesses that you've targeted those sectors and you want them to reduce electricity for them. Hasten every process that they need to go through that imposes cost on the operations. Have dedicated government services that are focusing on those economies. And then the government should have a procurement law that supports the direct purchase of what they produce. Because what's the point of producing 3 times a day when there's no demand for what I produce? I mean, I cannot invest my working capital in stocks. So there should be a procurement law that clearly specifies that all those firms that are running a 24-hour economy are going to be the first focus, even if competitively relative to imports, they are a little bit uncompetitive. We'll still buy it from them. Because you see, it is the demand that will lead to the economies of scale that will get the firms to produce at the last scale and reduce their cost of production. And then they become competitive. That is the way countries that have used these things have worked. This part of the world, these exemptions do not work. I mean, you can talk to businesses, I mean, they'll tell you. And they are there. It's even too cumbersome, so let me go on with my business. They don't want the stress. And so let us look at that and the focus, and I've been saying to this government that let's focus on that, reduce the cost of doing business. In so doing, don't forget about the other sectors of firms that are not doing another policy, because they are also providing the service. So whilst your focus is here, you are purposefully supporting them, don't forget about these other firms. There are too many taxes. Our inability to tax the informal sector has turned government's attention more on only formal sector firms that they can say collect all the money from. We may have times for political experience, the politicians want to make chase people. But nobody should be in this country who earns income that doesn't pay taxes. It's not only those of us who are in the formal sector. There are a lot of people in the informal sector and businesses that earn a lot of money, they don't pay any tax. Yes. So we should look at how we can increase tax revenue by not imposing more taxes on those who already pay taxes. It's hurting them, and the business will tell you that it's hurting us. So the tax incentives, I don't believe in it. I also think that what will make this 24-hour economy work is to continue the 1D, 1F policy, and let that same secretariat, if it has to be refined, continue with the 24-hour policy, because it's the same thing. But when you push that aside and you set up a new one, then if there's a change in government, that will also go and a new one will be set. I think the reset agenda for this government, and this government has started very well. The economic indicators are all showing. The confidence people have in the economy has been restored. This is the time for them to do new things from the bad things that we've done in the past. So if the 1D, 1F didn't work and there were issues with it, address it. You can turn it into a 24-hour economic policy so that support those firms under the 1D, 1F that are capable of enjoying whatever support under the 24-hour economy. When you neglect them and you go for entirely new support, then it's going to create a problem. And so we need to, and then we need to move some of these initiatives into state institutions that outlive changes in government. The National Development Planning Commission is just advising government. We need to change the constitution, give them the bite for them to drive a policy like a 24-hour economy. So it doesn't matter which government is in power. That policy is clearly being driven by an institution that outlives the change in government. Otherwise, if it's being driven from party manifestos, then unless we hope that the government stays in power for a long time, trust me, it will change, because that the concept is tied to a party. And if you listen to the language, 1D1F, the Democratic opposition said there was nothing good about it. The 24-hour economy, and trust me, it is the same thing. Whatever support and whatever the intention behind those policies is import substitution, industrialization, and export promotion.
Right.
It's the same thing.
Right.
There's no difference. It's just the name. Now, those who supported the 1D, 1F say, look, 24-hour economy would work. We need to get beyond these parties and develop an economy.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. I think you've made your points very clear. Number one, make sure the cost of doing business is reduced. That would rather go a long way. Secondly, take advantage of the initiatives already begun, continue them. And that is one of the few ways you can ensure that 24-hour economy outlives every government. We'll wrap up with just 3 questions, because I saw those 3 who raised their hands. I want to believe it's 1 question each they had. If we could pass on the mic, I know there's a question from the lady at the back. We'll leave one mic here. We'll leave one mic here for our panelists to respond to.
So, my name is Auntie Matilda. We are into export. My question goes to Mr. Capital Venture. You see, he is talking for 10 years loans and all those things. But we, on the other side of the export, if in case I have $500,000 worth of export, our export is time bounding. It's just 3 months. You have to ship everything. And then if I come to him, will he give me money? Because I don't want him to come and tell me that we go to the board and then we talk about it, because our work is time bounding. And then after we finish, everything will come to them. They will take their money, their interest, and whatever they is remaining will be given to us. We are being, in fact, we are working through Prudential Bank, through Exim Bank. But in case maybe if this is feasible, we can come to them. Yeah. So if I get $500,000 worth of an export order, we
should get the money from you, Mr. Aziz.
So I think that we work in a different model, right? So one is we reduce cost of capital itself, but we don't do projects. We invest in businesses. So if she has a business that is export oriented, we are investing in the whole business, including what she's doing. So we are not going to give her money for only the 500,000 she needs currently, but we are going to give her enough money so as for her to expand and support government initiative of job creation. That is what we do. So we don't do projects and give small money just for one project and assignment, and that is it. No, our money is patient capital. It is there for you for maximum 10 years. So we want to drive real economic growth in the country. So we don't give you money just for one off-take and that is it. We invest in the whole value chain of your business, identify your challenges, help with you. Usually our investment is like marriage. Yes. No. So it is a marriage, but it has an end.
Yeah.
Because we do equity. No, basically that's how we say it, right? So that's how we do our investment. We don't only even give you money. We sit with you, identify your challenges, and then with the key expertise that we have, work towards it to refine your product and everything, and then scale you up. That's what we've been doing.
Yeah.
And then we have businesses who have gone through that challenge.
Yeah, I'm sure Madam Matilda will have follow-up. When we are done, he will be available for a follow-up discussion. But we will take our next question. We are wrapping up. Unfortunately, let's take our next question from you, and then we'll hear from Madam as well. I believe that will be it. Yes.
Thank you very
much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr.
If you could speak up, please, into the mic.
My name is Dr. Victor Mene. A few remarks before I go to the venture capital panelist in respect to some of the things he has said. Number one, I was thinking maybe there are a few persons who have also been part of this panel. Maybe somebody from the Ministry of Trade, and then maybe somebody from the, maybe after you talked about, and maybe somebody from JEPA, and maybe another person from maybe any of the banks, if you like, just to give that flair of the robust conversation we're having in this room. Especially from the angle Prof had taken the dimension, because some of those things, those responses will come from those folks, as it were. All right, but for the venture capital, I think from my experience over the years of the businesses, I don't think, I may be wrong, but because of time, I just want to be very blunt with my position, and then rebuttals can come after we have ended this session. I don't think those funds are there. Funds available will chase those who need them. From my rudimentary understanding of funds, you can't have funds sitting and ready for specific purposes, and we don't get to know about them. Knowing about this program was not, nobody called me. There were mediums that was used to push this program. And several other funds out there we are also making attempts to get within Ghana and outside Ghana that are ready. They chase those who are eligible for it, because no idle funds anywhere, and they are all time bound. So Roberto can come later on that, but that's number one. Number two, talking about investing in business, in the value chain and all of that, and some of the figures you've read out, 170, 700 million. It will also be very nice in a forum like this, when you rule out those figures, you can point out 1, 2, 3, 4 organizations within that same economy that are benefiting, and also perhaps a little way on how they got it. In the passing, you mentioned MasterCard. I'm a practitioner. I'm a beneficiary of MasterCard, and I understood the procedure and how eventually I got what I got from them. As a matter of fact, what is being said in forums like this is not exactly what it is when the particles are out there. And when we come to forums like this, especially with the nature of the persons that will be coming around, then we're able to indicate for this particular kind of fund, XYZ is required. If you want more information in that regard, this is where you go to. If you want information, come and see us and do this and do that. In a nutshell, I think we should be very, very intentional and precise when we make out or we put out some of these figures. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I actually thought it was a question, and it sounds like quite a number of comments or contributions and suggestions that you would like to make. Thank you very much. It's been taken in good faith. We actually did invite a number of other ministries that were supposed to attend, but they just couldn't make it. And also to remind us that this is just the second in a series of webinars. We intend to run a few more. We intend to bring up most of the regulators that we would like to see and speak to and ask questions of. So please just watch the space. We'll come back to you again with webinars that would have more of the people that you would like to see and ask questions of. But we will take one more comment. One more comment. It has to be a question. Is it a question or is it a comment? Okay, just two more and then we'll be wrapping up and we'll be done.
Good afternoon. I am Jane Ochre Eduachi, American Chamber of Commerce, Ghana. It's been a very educative session. In fact, I'm glad to be here. Thank you, UKGCC and Deloitte for putting this together. Touching on in fact, all that we've been discussing is runs through all the chambers, so that's why I'm saying it's educative. At least I have a take-home. I have a lot of take-homes. Considering the 24-hour economy, there were 2 points I wanted to make. One was about the electricity, which Prof actually mentioned. The next one is streamlining regulatory, security improvement. Security. Because if we are talking about 24-hour economy, then I think it would be good to also have also 24-hour security for in the district sectors for the, those in that space. Also about the, I think our gentleman touched on the human capital. This human capital that he touched on, and he also mentioned that, if you need to, people usually would use the Togolese for business. Yes, that's true. Now, what do we do? What do we do as a country? I don't think this, I want to, I'm looking at all of us, not only the government. What do we do? Because I think this has to do with our orientation. Because when you have to, you need to, of course, if you even want to do, employ somebody to do the tiling or whatever, they always go for the Togolese, which is very true. But what do we do? I wish I can also take something home from this. Because there's been a lot of discussions about this one. What do we do as a country, as a people, not only the government? What do we do about this particular situation where people would prefer to use the Togolese other than in Ghana? Because it is our orientation. But what do we do? Thank you.
All right, we'll take a final comment, final one, and then we'll have closing remarks, and then we'll be out of here in a few minutes. Yes, Joachim.
Thank you. My name is Joachim. I work with Deloitte. So, Prof, I think I agree perfectly with you on the whole focus on tax incentives, which the bureaucracies around business really getting access to it. I've consulted with a lot of businesses, clients that made applications under the 1D1 of generally qualified, they couldn't get. They have investment plans that is anchored on that. Well, they have to do their modeling and this one will feed into it. They couldn't get. So really, the benefit that they can really get automatic is how government can reduce cost of doing business. So you mentioned that So I just want you to be more specific if there are areas that you can mention. I know GIPC mentioned they have used technology, right, to reduce maybe the time of application, bureaucracies, going to see people and all that has come down. Are there any general rules you can set so that government can focus on to reduce costs of doing business? Thank you.
All right. GIPC, I believe. Kwame, would you be? Okay, Prof. If you could be addressing that question quickly, and then we'll take the closing remarks very quickly, under a minute, and then we'll be out of here.
Okay, so one thing that you can do to reduce the cost of doing business is to build what we call smart infrastructure, right? And I'm saying smart infrastructure because that is the only time that you have private sector come in to support government, because they need to recoup. And smart infrastructure is a road that is tolled and you don't have anybody collecting the revenue. So the private sector knows that when I go in, there is a metering system that is counting the number of cars. So at the end of the day, I know how much money the government has to give to me. I can go and invest there. When we begin to invest in smart infrastructure, we have private sector bringing a lot of resources to do that. So you have a road network that has some micro technology beneath the road that somebody sitting at the Ministry of Roads and Transport is monitoring the road and can tell in the next 2 years when they need to go back and go and refit part of the road. All of these things are done elsewhere to maintain the infrastructure so that the movement of my goods from my factory gates to the port of exit or to the markets is not distracted by road networks. And I'm saying smart infrastructure because not until the infrastructure is smart, private sector will not take his money in. They need to monitor. He's going for a loan to come and invest. He needs to sit down at home with an app to be counting the number of cars that have applied the route from Accra to Tema, how much revenue is getting in. In that way, he's able to monitor his returns from that investment. It allows us also to build technology and infrastructure for maintenance so that they don't break down and then it causes these issues with delays and all of that. That is something the government can take a look at and then ensure we have a Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. Those monies can go into building this very smart infrastructure to help. So that if you are paying your tax, there's an app that you sit in your office. You don't need to employ 5 workers who are not into direct production. All they are doing is helping you to meet the regulatory demands. That is a waste. You should have an app that can tell you how much you are going to pay and all of that. And then quickly, there's a platform where you send the monies to, it's paid. So you don't need extra officers to be doing all of those running up and down. I mean, our court processes, for instance. Contract enforcement is one of the key indicators of the environment of doing business. Ghanaians don't respect contracts. That is why she's talking about the Togolese. The Togolese will take the job and tell you, boss, I'll deliver in 2 days. Pay me so much. You give him the money, he's delivered. The Ghanaian guy will tell you, give me that money. 3 weeks he's giving you all sort of excuses. It is raining, all of this. So it is part of our orientation. And the only way we can get rid of some of these things is also to reorient ourselves. Because people sit in offices and they are paid for what they do, but they always think that they are doing the businesses who come to them a favor, which is wrong. So there should be a change in our national psyche as well. The East Asians developed because they had a nationalistic edge to see to the development of their economies. Here we don't have. Not only even the artisans. When you go to some of these big companies, their managers are foreigners. Because the Ghanaian managers are not only involved in certain things that I'm not want to talk about them. I mean, there's no trust and all of that. So these are the sort of things. But the government itself should look at the infrastructure, partner with private sector to build that infrastructure, build very good infrastructure. Not these roads that every 2 years they get and we have to reconstruct them. We need to invest money into infrastructure, energy, roads, security. We also need, even in the health sector. I mean, 24-hour economy means also health facilities operating 24 hours. In the districts where the companies are operating 24/7 because people might get injured. There should be health facilities. There should be ambulances that are operating 24/7 to moving people out. There should be a good public transportation system that will move me in the night shifts when I'm going to work at 10 p.m. to be safe on a bus that takes me to my factory to go and work. When I close at 6 a.m., come home safely. These are all things the government needs to invest in to ensure that it works. And when you do that, you reduce the cost of doing business in the economy. And that's what I'm talking about. So there are things that others have done elsewhere. We can replicate it in our own way to make it appropriate to our circumstances. And then make sure that we are able to benefit from that.
Thank you, Prof. I think all the panelists deserve a round of applause. I think it's been a useful discussion. There have been a number of questions online. I need to apologize. We are way out of time. We can't read out all your questions. So we'll quickly take the closing remarks in under a minute. We'll hear from the Associate Director at Deloitte in the person of Dennis Brown to quickly wrap up our discussions for us, and we'll be out of here.
All right, thank you, Na. And thank you to our panelists. It was a very enjoyable discussion. Although you guys have not been kind to me, asking me to step in for my boss who has run away 5 minutes before the end of the program. Thankfully, I was speaking some points, so I'll quickly rehash those points and then we can, close out on those. So, like I said, it's been an enjoyable discussion. Key points, clearly, we need to continue developing our economy, focusing more on transformation. Maybe prioritizing the productive sectors of our economy, allowing that to drive change. And what we've all learned is that is a multifaceted responsibility. Both government and private sector need to work closely to get us across the line. For government, we've heard things like the need to reduce regulatory complexity, reduce political decision and prioritize sound economic decision, no party people accessing funds all over. Focus more on creating enabling environment. Prof said government has no business being in business. The NDPC, which is the National Development Planning Commission, should lead our transformation so that all the parties can play into it. They can develop their manifestos out of it so that we are very focused on where we are going. GIPC, we've been told or you've been advised to also focus more on additional investments from existing investors instead of looking like always chasing foreign investors who does not, have that much local knowledge. I believe it's something you're taking away. We've also been told by Osman that the Venture Capital Trust Fund has worked with some private equity firms. They've closed out some funds that are already investing. And he's told us to go and chase them. So please, if you are here, you're running your small, medium businesses and you need money, you've heard some names. I'm sure you've taken note in Jaro, Mrepa, there's Oasis Capital as well. Please go and look out for them. Ask them to support you. We've also heard some interesting sectors that holds opportunities for all of us. I think we had infrastructure, which is tied to construction. There was also agribusiness and agric, getting into the farms and producing. We've also had renewable energy. There was also emphasis on human capital, which normally we don't talk about, but there's a lot of opportunities there. I've seen some of the PEs investing in schools, etc. Some of them have, exited successfully. They are quite happy. There's also responsible mining. These days we just don't mention mining, but we want to talk about responsible mining. There's opportunities in there. I might also add technology and then health services, although it didn't come up here, but I think they all agree with me that there are a lot of opportunities in there as well. So it's been a good discussion. Like I said, thank you all for making time to join us. Hopefully the next series will be even much better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you for that. Gentlemen, ladies, thank you so much. Nicholas online, thank you so much for your contributions. For our in-person participants, thank you for making the time. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your contributions, your comments. We've taken them. And also to our online participants as well. You have been very patient. We started quite late, but you've been patient and stayed with us. Once again, thank you all so much. Remember, this is a series of webinars. This is just one of them. There will be another one coming up soon. Just watch this space. Until then, thank you and bye-bye for now.
This is Deloitte Ghana. By building on Deloitte core purpose, an impact that matters. We are a leader in professional services in Ghana. Across many Ghanaian professional services firms, our identity can be traced as far back as 1947. For the first time, here is our story. Meet some of the people who started it all. In 1939, James Donald Barnes, a Scottish chartered accountant, arrived in Gold Coast as an internal auditor of a United Africa company. This was an era where there were very few qualified accountants in the country, with most of the pioneering accountants in West Africa being foreigners. Our story in Ghana began on 1st January 1947. J.D. Barnes opened his office under the name J.D. Barnes & Co. Chartered Accountant. In 1954, Mr. Barnes spearheaded the formation of the first registered professional accountant body in British West Africa, the Association of Accountants in the Gold Coast, which will evolve into the Institute of Chartered Accountants, Ghana, in 1963. Focused on making more impact, Mr. Barnes made strategic mergers between 1955 and 1972 that changed the name of the firm from Migley Snelling, Barnes & Co. to Hammond Banner Migley, Snelling, Barnes & Co. Then later, Deloitte & Co. And in 1972, Deloitte Haskins & Sales. In 1978, J.D. Barnes, as a true innovator and a contributor to society, spearheaded the formation of the Ghana Institute of Taxation as a professional body to train tax professionals in the country. In 1979, the office relocated from the 3rd floor of Cocoa House to Ibis Court, 4th Liberation Road, Accra, Ghana. This will go on to become our office location for more than 40 years. After more than 30 years of service and dedication to the Ghanaian firm in 1980, J.D. Barnes was succeeded by Joseph Kobina Forson after his retirement from professional work. J.K. Forson, the first Ghanaian managing partner, led the Institute of Chartered Accountants Ghana as president from 1982 to 1984. In 1991, Cecilia Nyan was appointed as a partner and became the first female partner in the Big Four accounting firms in Ghana. She later became the president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants Ghana from 2008 to 2010. Deloitte Ghana has contributed to 3 presidents of the ICAG since their inception. Later that year, under the leadership of J.K. Forson, Deloitte Haskins & Sales merged with Tete, Usher & Partners, who were representatives of Touche Ross International, to form Deloitte & Touche Ghana. In 1992, Dr. Pakwasi Indum, a partner of Touche Ross Milwaukee office, USA, relocated to Ghana to help establish Deloitte & Touche West Africa Consulting Division. He later became a renowned politician in Ghana. In 2002, after 20 years of outstanding leadership, J.K. Forson retired as a managing partner to become chairman of Deloitte Ghana. Seth Chade succeeded him and led the firm from 2002 to 2008 as a managing partner. He is credited with the setting up of the tax and regulatory service line of the firm. In 2003, Deloitte became the first singles global brand with a green dot punctuating Deloitte's new wordmark logo. From 2008 to 2017, Deloitte Ghana was under the leadership of Felix Nanasaki and Andrew Opuni Ampong. In 2009, the green dot was introduced as a core symbol of our global brand, representing all we do in the world instantly. In 2016, Deloitte's logo was rebranded with Deloitte written in black color instead of the earlier blue. In 2017, Charles Labi Odam was appointed